Shalom, everyone. Today we'll learn about the physical appearance of the Chazan and also hopefully segue into the idea of Mourners Kaddish and how it came to be. So, just for clarification, what Rabbi Melamed writes in Peninei Halacha is not always what he instructs people personally. So, if there's a community that feels that this is too strict, especially the paragraph that we'll learn today, there's always room for leniency. I know that the Rav of the Kibbutz Adati, the Rav Beni Lau, I think his name is, he's in charge of all the religious kibbutzim in Israel. And he said that because people come from the barn or from the field or from whatever, and they're wearing sandals and shorts and short sleeve, during the week that is permissible. On Shabbos, it's not. And so that's just one leniency that we'll see, but we won't see here in Rav Melamed. So the Chachamim, our sages, say in Megillah 24a that a pocheach, a person whose clothes do not cover his body in a respectable manner, may not read from the Torah nor lead the prayer service. Because if you remember, we are facing the king, we are coming to talk to the king, and just like you wouldn't have an appointment with the president of the United States looking like a homeless person or a bum, and I'm not accusing them of anything. It's not the respectable manner. Therefore, a person wearing sleeveless shirt or shorts may not be appointed Chazan, and I think also not be called up to the Torah. If his sleeves are very short and do not reach near his elbow, he should cover his arms until his elbow with his talit. In our yeshiva, they had these sleeves that you could just add on with rubber bands or something to hold it in place, and so that way nobody was embarrassed if they came with a short sleeve and they volunteered or were asked to be a chazan. They could do that. However, one whose short sleeves almost reach his elbow may serve as chazan because it's obvious that he's not trying to be disrespectful. It's just that his shirt is one size too small. Likewise, the sages state that a person whose beard is not yet full may not be appointed a regular chazan, since it is disrespectful towards the congregation and the prayer service to select someone who has not yet completely matured. Again, this is based on the custom. If the whole community is clean shaven, Rabbi Lichtenstein, nobody would ever think that he was being disrespectful by having a clean shaven face. And also the idea of a regular chazan as opposed to someone who's just appointed temporarily is what we're going to be talking about. And just to give the historical background, when King David sent messengers to the king of Ammon, Nahash, to basically comfort him and console him after the passing of his father, the king of the Ammonites somehow thought that it would be really funny to shave half the beards of these emissaries, and it said that they were embarrassed. It was cherpa is the word that was used in the book of Samuel, and so obviously the appearance of a Jew usually is with a beard, but we don't criticize, especially today when people shave and it's not with a razor, that you are clean shaven. And again, it depends on how you look and what the custom is in the community. However, on a temporary basis, even an adolescent whose beard has not yet started to grow may lead the prayer service. And even in yeshiva high schools, you can't ask only the rabbis to always lead because they are tired enough from everything else. But so we try to teach the kids, but for a congregation, it's already well based and well established. It is not appropriate. An 18-year-old whose beard has started to grow slightly may be appointed a regular chazan. Similarly, appointing a 20-year-old whose beard has not yet sprouted is permissible, since it is clear to all that he is an adult and there is no disgrace to the congregation or to the prayer service. Based on this, some Achronim, the later rabbis and authors, write that a young boy who has lost one of his parents may not be a regular chazan for Shacharis or Mincha, the morning and afternoon services. Rather, he should suffice with saying the Kaddish, and that's how we segue into the Mourners Kaddish. but for Mariv, in which there is no Chazarat Hashatz, even one whose beard has not yet grown in completely may lead the prayer service regularly. So that's about the clothing and the beard. And because we talked about the child saying Kaddish, and there's even a Yiddish expression, little Kaddishul, basically when people were dying at a young age, especially the fathers, they would make sure that the kids, even from the age of 5 or 6, knew how to say the Mourners Kaddish, and it was basically to break people's hearts to understand how painful this is that we are grieving. Because somebody who's an adult could have volunteered, but instead we really wanted to do that. And also, it's something that we do in the cemetery. I don't know about DC, but here in Fredericton, in the entrance are a row of babies that died before even the 8th day. Some of them were circumcised, some of them weren't. It was before my time, but that's also to increase this grief that we're talking about. So a person mourning the death of one of his parents says Kaddish during the first year. Saying Kaddish is of great value to the deceased. It saves him from the judgment of Gehinnom, of hell. For since his son, whom he's left behind in this world, is sanctifying God by reciting this prayer, and his merits increase. So the basis for this is based on a story that is brought in Masechet Sofrim, just after the Talmud was written, and also later sources where Rabbi Akiva was a wood gatherer, and he saw somebody gathering wood basically alongside him, and then suddenly disappearing. So one day before he disappears, he catches him and he says, "What are you collecting the wood for?" He said, "I'm collecting the wood to burn my soul in hell." And so he says, "Is there anything I can do for you to save you from this?" And he said, "I hear that I have a son. I hope he survived. If you can find him and teach him to sanctify God's name, to say Yehesh Me Rabba Mevorach, then I will be released from this terrible, terrible punishment." And so that's the source, really. And already in Brachos it mentions about how we say Yehesh Me Rabba, and it's maybe a translation of other verses in the Torah, but that's the story that we go with for this idea of the 12 months. And really, we do 11 months in one day, but that's not really the topic. So one must say Kaddish even for completely righteous parents, as well as for someone who is killed for the sanctification of God's name, because we don't know people's judgment, and even though they were righteous, they still might suffer, and we want their suffering to end or be minimized. So concerning righteous parents, though they are already promised life in the next world, their son's Kaddish elevates their soul and causes them to be at peace. And that's what we call Ilui Neshama, that the soul, even though they're not doing any more mitzvahs in this world, can ascend to a higher place in heaven. Certainly one must recite Kaddish for evil parents, since they are in great need of Kaddish, which diminishes the judgment of Gehinnom. And from personal experience, people who had been abused by their parents, this actually helps them get closure. They know that now their parents are in a different place, and Hashem is doing whatever judgment there is, but we still say Kaddish because we want to have the process of grief and forgiveness in a complete way. We even say Kaddish for someone who committed suicide, although the Chachamim taught, and instead of present tense, I'm changing it to taught, that we do not mourn for them and they do not have a share in the next life. Today we don't believe that. We believe that it was a mental state of mind, and so we don't judge them. We bury them in the regular cemetery. We sit shiva for them, etc., etc. And it's definitely appropriate to say Kaddish. Last but not least, if the son knows how to lead the service, he should be the Chazzan on weekdays, since this benefits the deceased even more. If it is difficult for him, he should try to lead the prayer service from Ashrei after Tachnun until the end of the service. That's also where the Mourners Kaddish and the Rabbi's Kaddish are placed. It is especially good for him to be a Chazan from Ma'ariv, since that time the judgment in Gehinnom intensify. This is particularly true on Motzei Shabbos when the souls return to Gehinnom after their respite during Shabbat. This is all mystical for me, and it doesn't really apply to halacha. It's just the idea that we want people to understand that there's a time to grieve and there's a time to not grieve, and it's all very, very complicated. There's different customs about it, and I'll just say I'll skip to the end where he talks about reciting the prayers on Shabbat and the festivals. There were certain communities in which, over time, more and more people did not know how to lead the prayer service, and therefore they established that mourners should not lead the services. However, from Ariv, it is proper not to prevent a mourner. Also, it's a previous paragraph, where on Shabbat and holidays not to lead it, and also not uh, on Rosh Chodesh and Chanukah. So even if the Chazan on Rosh Chodesh was chosen to say Shachris, somebody else takes over for the Hallel, and that's our custom.